70, we have the superintendent of the Corinth School District, Dr. Lee Childress, joining us. Dr. Childress, how are you doing today?
Doing great. It's good to be with you, Dave.
Good to have you back. I haven't talked to you in a while, and this seemed like the week to talk to you because we had hearings this week that Corinth was kind of featured in a way, as the discussion is starting to expand regarding year-round schooling. How do you think the hearings went on Monday?
I think the hearings went extremely well. It gave us an opportunity to share with legislators and others in the state our experience with the modified calendar. And we've been involved with the modified calendar going on our fifth school year.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is one of the first questions that everyone comes up with. Well, you can't just continuously go to school. You have to have a break. But in the case of this particular type of thing, it's not really an increase in the number of days students are in school, is it?
That's why we call it a modified calendar rather than year-round school, because when people hear the word year-round school, they do exactly what you just said. They think you're in school all year. We have not increased the number of days that most students go to school. We still run the 180-day calendar that you see in most Mississippi schools. However, what we have done is we've spread that 180 days out differently than most schools do, which we basically run 45 days and then take a 15-day break. And during that 15-day break, we conduct enrichment and remediation activities for students during that time.
And that's to allow some of them to catch up that might need a little catch-up time before you get back into the swing of things.
Absolutely. We offer an opportunity to accelerate those students' learning that are behind to try to catch them up. But at the same time, we also run enrichment activities during that time period for those parents that want their children to further accelerate their learning.
Now, as this conversation continues to pick up and the legislature holding hearings on it, obviously this is a topic of discussion over at the Capitol. One of the questions that comes up regarding this is, what about the parents? Because this just changes everything in terms of their personal schedule and vacations and everything else. At least it seems like it would from the outside coming in. What have you heard from the parents in your school district now that you've been doing this for a while regarding how it has impacted their lives?
Well, a lot of our parents had apprehension, no doubt, because as you say, it totally changes the way things are being done. Everybody was used to having, your 9 or 10 weeks off in the summer. But as we have transitioned into this calendar, I think we found that more and more parents actually like it because you mentioned vacations. It now allows them to take a vacation during that extended time period in October or March that they might have only been limited to in the summer in the past. But the real reason for doing it, as I said, is to provide that real-time remediation and enrichment, that deliberate practice, that deliberate instruction, and increase the time for those students that need extra time to learn.
Now, let me ask you this. How long have you been on this schedule at the Corinth School District?
We are in our fifth year of implementation of this schedule.
What results have you seen from this in terms of the scores, of the grades, and the learning of the students?
We have seen some increased learning, particularly in our elementary school. We've seen some pretty powerful results in pre-K and kindergarten, where Mississippi has a post-test with the Mississippi Kindergarten Assessment System, in that those children that have 15 days or more of additional instruction are outperforming all of our other groups.
One thing that is well known amongst teachers, my mom was a teacher for 30 years, and I heard this every year, it seems like, is the fact that over a long summer break, by the time they get back to school, you spend the first 2 or 3 weeks trying to catch them back up to the point they were at when school let out in May. Does this do anything to combat that?
We think it could potentially help that because you really go from like a 10-week summer down to a 6 or 7 week summer. And so we think it could have, some help with that summer slide, as you talked about your mother frequently referred to. So, it reduces the summertime. So hopefully it does not require us to do as much catching up at the start of school.
Now, having said that, there are other aspects to school than just the classroom that we consider to be very important as well in regards to extracurricular activity. Sports, for example. How does this adjusted, redone schedule affect your sports and your extracurricular activities?
Extracurricular activities and sports continue on even if we are on break. So like when we were on the 3-week break in October, we still had football games on Friday night. So, our athletes continue to practice and our coaches continue to work with them during that time. But as we were considering this calendar, we talked about the fact that in many cases we had always played baseball over spring break. We had played basketball over Thanksgiving and Christmas holidays. So what we're talking about doing over the intercession periods, those break periods, is really no different than what we were doing with your basketball and baseball during a regular school calendar.
We talked about vacations. What would you say to parents with 5 years experience under your belt or almost 5 years on this schedule? What would you say to parents whose response to this is, well, what is this going to do for me for daycare and keeping up with the kids and taking care of them? That's a big issue for a lot of folks because they're out working, making a living, and this kind of upends the apple cart a little bit when it comes time to putting that schedule together and figuring out where your kids are going to be and be safely cared for while you're at work when school is not in session. I realize it's about the same number of days, but it's spread out. Have you heard anything from parents regarding that being more difficult, more challenging?
I think initially it did create some challenges. However, that's one of the reasons that we run the enrichment strand, because the enrichment strand allows parents, if they want their children to continue to come, and it could be for a daycare option. They can continue to come for that 3-week period and participate in those enrichment activities. What we have found is we have seen that we have about 25% of our student population that attends school over the intercession.
And that's my question at that point for that segment of the population. You, in a way, are increasing the school days per year.
We are increasing the school days, and I think that can be important because I think that if you pair the time, which we're talking about, the increase in the additional school days, with deliberate practice and deliberate instruction, you can see increased student achievement and increased student growth, both in those students that are needing their learning accelerated because they're behind, but also you can accelerate the learning of those students that want to improve and want to grow as learners through enrichment activities.
And that does make sense, but there is the feeling amongst some parents that this is a slippery slope, and before you know it, they're in school year-round, and they don't necessarily want that. What would you say to those parents that just for a variety of reasons have some trepidation about even discussing this plan, much less implementing it?
Well, I think that you raise a good point there. And what I would say is this calendar might not be for every school district. And so I don't think it's something that the Mississippi legislature will look at mandating. I think local school district decision, because that's where the law ultimately gives local school districts the option or opportunity to set their calendars. And so I think you need to have a lot of conversations before you move in this direction as we did in Corinth. So I wouldn't say that this is a calendar that is a fit for every community.
Dr. Lee Childress, Superintendent of the Corinth School District, we appreciate your time today, and it sounds like it's working pretty well in Corinth so far.
It has worked well, and we've been pleased with the results so far.
We appreciate your time, and keep up the good work in Corinth.
Thank you. Good talking with you today, Dave.
Anytime, Dr. Lee Childress. We continue.